Someone call an ambulance, but not for me. Calling the cops on your son's best friend who he regularly has sleepovers with at your house. Now, was that the right thing to do? Who knows? Let's find out on our first story today. G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee and welcome back to another episode of r/AmITheA. Now, if you love today's bloody good stories, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn to the barbie, and get ready for this delicious content. Let's go. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my son's friend? My son Brian, 13, has a friend Tom, 13, who I really dislike. To put it in the gentlest possible terms, Tom has never been disciplined a single day in his life, and is under the impression that there are, and never will be, any consequences for his actions. However, since Brian is on the spectrum, very few other children want to hang out with him. I have tried to tell him that Tom is using him for his Nintendo Switch, but he's unable to process that. Every time Tom comes over, he'll hog the Switch to play one of the games, oftentimes a single player. Over the weekend, Tom came over for a sleepover. As usual, he raced right up to Brian's room, turned on the game, and sat there for hours. He played until 3 AM on Sunday morning, and then woke up at 10 AM, and without joining us for breakfast, started playing more. At around 12, Brian had reached his limit and told Tom that it was time to go home. He was tuned out completely. Brian then came to me asking what he should do, and I told him to be more assertive. An hour later, he came back, basically in tears, saying that no matter what he said, Tom was just ignoring him or giving him short, a little more answers. I walked in to find Tom, as usual, mouth-breathing at the screen. I told him I had to drive him home, and Tom responded that he'd walk. It's like 2 miles. Then I told him that he had to go home, and the kid legitimately looked at me in the eye and said, "No, I don't think I will." He actually tried to pull off the Captain America line. I then called his mother, who didn't pick up. Finally, I unplugged the machine from the wall, causing his game to turn off, but he attached the controller to the handheld part and sat on Brian's beanbag chair, again, impervious to anything we said. At my limit, I went into the other room and called the police. Since we live in a small town, the police officer, a good friend of ours, came right over. He walked up to Tom and said there had been complaints of trespassing, which Tom responded to by saying he had been invited. The officer looked at me, and I assured him that we had asked him to go home. Then the officer asked if he wanted to be charged with misdemeanor trespassing. Tom finally got his act together and was taken home by the police, but on his way out, I told him that he was never going to step foot in my house again. I told him not to talk to Brian at school and not to text Brian privately. An hour later, Tom's mother called me and shrieked over the phone until hoarse about how horribly I had treated her son. I stayed calm and told her I'd called her, but she then said that she was busy in a meeting and couldn't talk. I guarantee that Tom fed her some lie-filled story, but I didn't have the energy. I told her to get her crap together as a parent and just hung up on her. I've received dozens of anger-filled texts, both from Tom's mother and numbers I don't know. I wouldn't care what those trashy parents think, but I wonder if they have a point. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. Involving the police might have gone over the top. Tom's mother certainly seems to think it was too much. No, I don't think in this situation that involving the police was too much. What other options did you have besides physically pulling him out of the house yourself? And in that case, you'd get in much more trouble as they would have evidence of that. And that's a much more egregious offense than just calling the police and getting them to solve it. I myself can't think of any other ways to get this child out of your house without you being in a bunch of trouble for it. You exhausted all your options, so you had to call the police. It's unfortunate that it had to happen, but it did happen. The mother shouldn't be responding the way she did, but she is. And that's just further enabling the son. That's something I don't agree with. Not the asshole for your actions in this post, OP. Now in the comments, Memento Mori 420 says, "Not the asshole. You took all the proper steps. At that point, it was down to calling the police or physically dragging the little brat out of your home. Both for the child's safety and for you not getting sued, calling the police was the right thing to do. 100%. Tom's mum would have called the police and sued for assault. You did the right thing, OP. Not the asshole. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, she seems like the type to make your life hell if you physically grab her kid. They're like the type of people who will make anyone's life hell just because other people say no and don't want to lick their feet when asked. Well, we're missing a few proper steps. Let's remember these kids are 13, and at no point did OP set any proactive expectations or outline possible consequences despite knowing the trend of Tom's behavior. Curiously, the parental role is missing entirely here. The kid did as he wanted for hours on end. And while calling the police was appropriate, it's highly strange not to alert his mother of that plan. Not so she could intervene, but because he's a child in OP's home and that communication would be expected. He's not 16, he is 13, and the fact that OP failed to set any expectations or get ahead of this, and instead allowed this for hours into the next day, telling their own son to be assertive when they themselves had been nothing of the sort, nah. A few proper steps were certainly missed. Kids can be assholes, but we still have to be parents, and OP missed a few crucial steps in protecting their kid from this situation. OP isn't this child's parent, and OP called the mom, who did not answer the phone. I'm sorry, it's pretty obvious after being told several times to leave that any proper protocol wasn't going to work on this kid. So what other steps were necessary? And Mogwitch replies, a lot of this needed to be done weeks before. OP has been unhappy with the way Tom was behaving, but not intervening or setting up ground rules at an early stage. Why was a kid she disliked and thought was mean to her son allowed to stay overnight while not interacting with the rest of the household in the first place? Where were the attempts to limit access to the Switch when he was solo playing for hours on previous visits? One of the reasons parents have rules is to protect their kid from pressure from other kids, to give Brian a framework to say no to Tom. If Tom didn't respond to earlier boundaries, he should have had his visits cut off before it got to this stage. OP is the asshole for not stepping in sooner. I don't know a lot of parents who would have tolerated it, but I get why. They wanted their kid to have a friend, but this is no friend. And back to the first comment there that we said on this one, OP replies, that's the conclusion I reached. I didn't know what else I could do. People are saying I should have been the adult or prevented this, but nobody is giving me any specific advice on how I should have gotten Tom out. I think what they're saying is, I should have ripped the game from his hands, which is not something that I do or ever will do. The only other option I could think of is just letting him continue his game marathon until he got sick and tired of the game, and then never invited him over again. But Brian was getting extremely anxious over this situation, and Tom repeatedly rebuking both of us. And a blazed sapphire says, not the asshole in my opinion. I have a brother who is also on the spectrum, and it would make me very angry if someone he considered a friend would take advantage of him like that. Obviously, calling the police seems a little extreme, but Tom wasn't listening to any reason, and he needed to learn that his actions have consequences. You have a right to protect your son, and if calling your police friend to give Tom some form of discipline was the only method, then I agree. Our next post is by user TA number 9, titled, Am I the asshole for not taking my brother's kids to Disneyland with me? Long backstory. My brother and I have had a strained relationship our whole lives. We come from a really abusive home. Our mum was amazing, but we were all horribly abused by our dad, and she couldn't or wouldn't leave. When I was 17, I moved out of state and had very little contact with anyone outside of my mum. My mum ended up being diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer and fought really hard for 8 years. I would fly in to visit her every few months as I could. I ended up remarried to a really horrible and abusive man. He ended up having a heart attack and had to have a quad bypass. He was horrible to care for and just got more and more cruel. 3 months after his heart attack, my mum's health turned for the worst and she passed. Our dad was horrible to us, going as far as to try to sue us for some money our mum left us. After the funeral, my husband got more and more abusive, and I took the money she'd left me and I filed for divorce. I decided I needed some me time, so I decided to go spend some time at Disneyland and visiting family in the area. My brother told me I was stupid for getting a hotel, and I should stay with him and his family. He has 2 girls, 5 and 8, that I have only met twice. When I get there, I was shocked that him and his wife were planning to go to work and leave the kids with me. I am not good with kids. I don't dislike them, I'm just uncomfortable with being responsible for them. The entire family knows this very well. I've been like that since I was a kid. I am happily child-free, and I told him I wasn't there to be daycare for his kids. He got upset because he'd already told our aunt that she didn't need to watch them that week. I was irritated that he hadn't even asked me about this. I told him that I wasn't planning on being available to sit at his house watching his kids while they worked, and reminded him that I was planning to spend a few days at the park, which is a few hours away. I may be bad with kids, but I know better than to even mention Disneyland around them. Later that night, he tells me that it's stupid to pay for a hotel by the park. I should just drive up for the day, then I can take the girls. Without missing a beat, he asks them if they want to go spend the day with their aunt at Disneyland. Their response is what you would expect. I was floored. I told them that I had to go home and I couldn't go. I grabbed my stuff and drove up and found a hotel close to the park. I spent 4 days bouncing between parks, ordering room service, going to the pool, spa, and bar, and a few times just drowned my sorrows alone in the hotel room. My phone blew up with family, who I haven't been close to in over a decade, telling me how awful I was and how much I'd upset the girls, my brother, and his wife, that they were all grieving too, and I was being selfish. So am I the asshole for not taking them with me? Your brother just neglects the fact that you had been abused horribly and your mother has died and that you're using this as a time to get away and, be away from people? Like this is going to be some you time and you really need this, as I imagine you would need in a situation like this. And he's like, you know what? You're going to be staying here with us at our house and you're going to be looking after all of our kids. And as soon as you try to escape, I'm just going to tell the kids that you're going to take them to Disney World. And if you leave now, you're going to break their little hearts. I'm not being abusive at all now, am I? Like, what an asshole. What an absolute piece of human garbage for doing that to your OP. I have absolutely no sympathy for him. I have all the sympathy in the world for the kids that have had their expectations crushed by him doing that to them. Intentionally. He knew what he was doing. Screw him. I'm glad you had a good time at Disneyland. Not the asshole. Now in the comments, Old Man Puzzles says, who the hell, after experiencing an abusive home, sees their sister fleeing another abusive home and decides, hey, free childcare? Absolutely not the asshole. Your brother is really heartless for treating you this way after so many recent traumatic events. Another abusive person. Considering he called OPs stupid more than once, my bet is that he learned his behavior from their dad. Yeah, he's being very manipulative. He didn't mention childcare to OP beforehand on purpose. He asked his children about Disneyland in front of OP in a way that he thought she would be unable to say no. Then he told the rest of the family to turn them against her. OP is smart and strong to say no. Not the asshole. Your brother, assuming you would babysit without asking, decide for you that a hotel is inappropriate and manipulating the situation to guilt you into taking his kids to Disneyland are all signs that your relationship with him is emotionally abusive. Given everything you've been through as a child and as an adult, I hope you've already found a good therapist. Block his number and those numbers from family who are critical and don't look back. And OP replies, I have spent a lot of time in therapy. The family uses it as proof that I have issues. He is the normal one who doesn't see a therapist. Our relationship was strained because as things got worse in our home as kids, he would find ways to throw me under the bus so that I was the focus of the anger instead of him. Once he was older, he would get into it with our dad and then leave, leaving me alone with him now that he was drunk and had been fighting with my brother. Our mum just avoided coming home at all costs. Oh, so he picked up your father's example to be an abuser. Block his number and enjoy your freedom. I'm so proud of you. Don't take this the wrong way, But you do understand that your mum failed you just as much as your father and brother, correct? I get that she might not have been able to leave, but it also doesn't sound like she did a lot to protect you either. Honestly, it's probably just best you limit contact with all remaining family. And OP replies, I don't take it wrong. That was a hard pill to swallow when I left home, but is why, as much as I loved her, I never went back, even when she was sick. I still loved her and had a relationship with her from afar, but I knew I could never depend on her. Well, now that you don't have to worry about her, you should consider your brother and your horrible ex as people you also no longer have to worry about, just in a different way. Our next post is by user Glowing Cash, titled, Am I the asshole for walking out of my husband's birthday dinner when his sister was complaining about her fertility? My husband's parents threw my husband a birthday dinner at their home last Saturday. During dinner, his sister announced that she was pregnant with her 6th child. Everyone congratulated her, and my husband grew quiet. He and I have been trying for a baby for 7 years now, and only just saved the money for IVF. Once the commotion about the new member of the family settled, my sister-in-law started her usual commentary on how much it sucks to be so fertile, and how she feels like she'll just never be able to stop having kids because the pill and contraceptive injection both failed, and how she's not a good fit for an IUD. By the time she pointed out she's been pregnant so often that they don't even need to have full sex anymore for her to get knocked up, I couldn't, and I walked out. My husband followed me, and I could see he was holding back some tears too. He apologized for saying nothing. I said he didn't need to, that he was obviously struggling too. By the time we made it home, his parents had called to say how sorry they were, and how none of that was meant to happen. His sister, on the other hand, called me a killjoy and a drama queen, and she told me that it was rude to walk out after all her parents' hard work, and for spoiling the celebration of a pregnancy. I hung up on her, and I want to cry because her words stuck in my head. Since then, she and my husband got into a fight because she called me selfish and said I made the dinner about me instead of them. I wish I could feel like she's totally wrong, but I worry she's right. Am I the asshole? Now in the comments, Scorpio Girl 70 says, Not the asshole. Wait, you spoiled the celebration for the pregnancy? Funny. I could have sworn it was a celebration for your husband's birthday. Definitely not the asshole. She basically brought an FU to her brother instead of a gift. A double FU between stealing the limelight and bragging that her husband can get her knocked up easily. Why would she discuss their sex life with her family? This is gross. I, for one, would not like to hear about my brother's sex life with his wife or want to hear that from my son. She obviously upstaged her brother's birthday dinner. Not the asshole, she, the sister-in-law, is the asshole. Well, it's because she actually knows how inappropriate her timing is, and how her joy will inadvertently bring pain to her brother and sister-in-law, and is trying to justify it to herself and everyone around her. It's not inadvertent. That's some conscious sadism going on. And notice her husband's parents understood perfectly why they left. I'm guessing everyone in the room knew that sister-in-law was the asshole here, not OP. Not the asshole. It was a birthday dinner for your husband, not a me, I'm pregnant again, it's all about me. I think she did it to ruin your dear husband's celebration, and they should have said something to her. Not the asshole, and next time she says something, ignore the hell out of her. When my husband and I announced our pregnancy, we found out later that my sister-in-law was also pregnant with her 2nd child, and apparently had also planned to announce at the same dinner. After we told everyone, she decided to wait another week or 2 until we got together again. I thought that was incredibly classy and thoughtful of her. I probably wouldn't have minded, as it was actually pretty cool that the cousins ended up being born within a couple weeks of each other. But it was really nice to let us have our moment, especially since we only ended up having the one. And Substantial Fool says, not the asshole. 1. Tell her husband to get a vasectomy. And 2. I wish you guys the best with IVF. It's a very long, emotional process, and I wish you nothing but all the happiness in the world. And our next post is by user Left Them Out, titled, "Am I the asshole for keeping my family out of my house in the rain because they sided with my ex-wife in the past?" So my ex-wife Sasha and I didn't end amicably. It was a total nightmare. Up until it was actually finalized, she was in denial about us splitting and was doing everything to keep me in her life. When that didn't work, she went overboard. We were separated for 7 months before I filed for divorce. Only a few people knew about our status, but she kept telling everyone we were still together and just trying to work it out. We weren't, but that was her lying. The divorce dragged on for a while, and around this time, I became friends with my current wife. It was almost like love at first sight. We really hit it off, and within 3 months after meeting, we started casually dating. Sasha found out and spread the lie that I'd been having an affair with my wife, and that's why I left her. Then made up another lie that she was pregnant, and I just left her and our unborn child for another woman. This was totally bullcrap, but my family ate it all up. They never even gave me the chance to say my side. Coincidentally, she miscarried from the stress of the divorce, and I was an even bigger monster to them. Then they went for my wife too, with calling her a homewrecker and many other horrible names. My wife was amazingly supportive through this, and I tried to keep her out of it as much as I could. But in the end, I cut my family out. For maybe 3 years, we haven't spoken. My wife and I just had a boy 7 months ago. Now, I don't know how they did, but apparently my brother managed to catch my ex in her lies. The truth has been trickling out, and now they want contact. Except, I don't want contact after how they acted, and especially not the way they treated my wife, without ever once believing me or giving me the chance to say my side. My mum, my sister, and my dad came to our place and begged to talk. I refused to open the door, so they were left outside. Coincidentally, it started to drizzle a little over here, but I still didn't let them inside. My brother believes I'm being an asshole leaving them outside the way I did when their goal was to apologize. And I guess my mum said she felt humiliated and crushed. I told him that's fine. I'm glad they finally saw the truth. In a way, I saw their truth in how ugly they can be, and even if they're remorseful now, my life has been happy and full without them. Now it's resorted into anger from him and my dad, thinking I'm being an immature asshole for not even giving them the chance to come into my home. It seems wild to me that they go to making me out to be the bad guy. I don't really know. Am I? That is some wild mental gymnastics from this family here, that they're able to hocus pocus up some stupid nonsense in their heads that suddenly you're the bad guy again, after they were shown that the mental cahoots from your ex were in fact cahoots and not truths. I can't imagine how you're feeling after all of that. I really pity what you're going through here, and I wish never to go through it myself. And the fact that these people are angry that you're not letting them inside is just so stupid. They haven't earned the right to it. They've not genuinely been sorry, and they haven't given you time to process your feelings. Leave them outside in the rain for all I care, not the asshole OP. Now in the comments, WindRiver7 says, "Not the asshole. The real reason they're contacting you is that they want to see your son. Interesting that you heard nothing from them until your baby's birth. Your family could have approached by phone call, email, text, but they really want to see your baby, and that is why they tried visiting in person before offering apologies ahead of time." And OP replies, "I've considered that the main reason too. I don't know how long ago they learned the truth. It was apparently recent." Well, that really lines up with their behavior. Don't be surprised if they try another approach. I would make sure that there are no flying monkeys that would share photos of your child with them. Yup, people can apologize, but that doesn't change what they did and the effect it had. I see this as OP protecting himself and his wife from people who have shown how awful they can be. Or who they fundamentally are as people. They were awfully quick to turn against OP, and there's nothing to suggest that they wouldn't do it again. Example A, calling OP an asshole for not falling all over himself to forgive the people who betrayed him, and then showed up on his doorstep, unannounced and without permission, expecting access to his home and family. Wow. Not the asshole. They locked you out in the storm of your divorce, when you could have used shelter with your family. I could keep going making parallels, but I feel like this is enough. I wish you kept going, to be honest. You mean like how they rained down lies on him and his wife? And Rainbow Bread says, I'm assuming they arrived here through their own transportation. They could have just left instead of hanging out in the rain. I'm gonna say not the asshole. They never should have gotten involved in your relationship drama in the first place. And it's hilariously ironic that they're mad at OP for not giving them a chance to apologize, when zero of them gave OP a chance to tell his side of the story all those years ago. I wouldn't be open to forgiving my family for their betrayal either, especially not with them behaving like this. This isn't remorse or contrition, this is entitlement. People who are actually sorry and understand how wrong they were don't behave like this. Them calling him an immature asshole for not immediately opening his home to them merely reiterates that they still do not grasp the extent of how screwed up their behavior was. Anyway guys, I think that's where I'm going to end today's video. If you did like it, tell me what you thought about it down in the comments below, and make sure to just interact with everyone in this community. I love each and every one of you that I get to see on a daily basis. And don't forget, if you are a Patreon subscriber, I love you. You're on the screen right now with the YouTube members as well. If you see yourself, give yourself a pat in the back. You guys help me continue this YouTube journey. You keep me going. I see you guys everywhere. I see your messages, and thank you so much for supporting me. I really love every single one of you. But with that all said, I'm going to be signing off now, guys. I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.